At 11:47 this morning, Moscow time, the Kremlin issued an emergency travel advisory that has never been issued in the history of Russian-Israeli relations. Quote, all Russian citizens currently in Israel are advised to leave immediately using any available commercial or charter flights. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs cannot guarantee the safety of Russian nationals who remain in Israeli territory beyond 72 hours. The advisory was not a recommendation. It was not a suggestion. It was a direct order from President Putin to evacuate Russia's estimated 18,000 citizens from Israel within 3 days. Subscribe to this channel immediately, because what I'm about to walk you through is not routine diplomatic protocol. This is Russia telling its citizens to get out of Israel before something happens. This is the Kremlin knowing something that the rest of the world does not yet know. And this is the international community now scrambling to figure out whether Putin just revealed that Russia is preparing to strike Israeli targets, or whether Russia has intelligence that someone else is about to strike Israel and Moscow does not want Russian casualties. Turn on notifications. Set them to all, because the next 72 hours will determine whether this evacuation order was a precaution or a warning, whether Putin is preparing military action against Israel, or whether Russia's intelligence services have detected an imminent threat from Iran, from Hezbollah, from another regional actor that would make Israel a war zone. Here is what happened in the 2 hours after the Kremlin announcement, because the timeline reveals how suddenly this order came. At 11:47 a.m. Moscow time, the evacuation advisory was posted on the Russian Foreign Ministry website. No advance warning, no gradual escalation of travel warnings, just an immediate directive to leave within 72 hours. At 12:03 p.m., the Russian embassy in Tel Aviv began calling Russian citizens registered with the consulate. Embassy officials told them to book flights immediately and to leave non-essential belongings behind. The message was clear. Speed matters more than preparation. At 12:34 p.m., Aeroflot, Russia's state airline, announced 6 additional flights from Tel Aviv to Moscow over the next 3 days. Standard Aeroflot service between Tel Aviv and Moscow is 2 flights per day. The airline just tripled capacity. That is not routine scheduling. That is emergency evacuation logistics. At 1:15 p.m., Israeli intelligence sources confirmed to Haaretz that Israel had no advance notice of Putin's evacuation order. The Kremlin did not inform the Israeli government before issuing the directive. That is significant, because Russia and Israel maintain a military coordination channel to prevent accidental conflict in Syria. If Putin was simply concerned about regional instability, he would have consulted with Israel. He did not. Hit that like button right now if you understand what just happened. Russia just ordered an emergency evacuation from a country with which it has normal diplomatic relations, gave no explanation, and did not coordinate with that country's government. The algorithm decides what breaks through. You decide whether this analysis reaches people who need to see it. At 1:47 p.m. Moscow time, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov held a press briefing. He was asked directly why Russia issued the evacuation order. His response, quote, the security situation in the region is deteriorating rapidly. We have information that leads us to believe Russian citizens in Israel face unacceptable risk. We are taking precautions. Peskov was then asked what information Russia has. He stated, I cannot comment on intelligence assessments. He was asked whether Russia is planning military action against Israel. He stated, Russia has no hostile intentions toward Israel, but we cannot control the actions of other regional actors. That answer is critical. Peskov did not deny Russian military action outright. He said Russia has no hostile intentions, which is diplomatic language that leaves room for military strikes framed as defensive or retaliatory. And he specifically mentioned other regional actors, which could mean Iran, Hezbollah, Syria, or proxies that Russia supports. At 2:34 p.m., the Israeli Prime Minister's office issued a statement, quote, Israel has received Russia's travel advisory. We are in contact with Russian officials to understand the basis for this decision. Israel remains secure, and we see no imminent threat to civilians or infrastructure. That statement is reassuring to the Israeli public, but it also confirms that Israel does not know why Russia issued the evacuation order. If Israeli intelligence had the same threat assessment as Russia, the statement would acknowledge the threat and explain Israeli preparations. Instead, Israel is saying, we do not see what Russia sees. Drop a comment right now. Tell me whether you think Russia is preparing to strike Israel, or whether Russia knows someone else is about to strike. I am reading every response, because this question is now being debated in every intelligence agency and military command center in the world. At 3:15 p.m., the Pentagon issued a brief statement, quote, we are aware of Russia's travel advisory regarding Israel. We are monitoring the situation closely and coordinating with Israeli defense officials. That statement is notable for what it does not say. It does not dismiss the Russian warning. It does not characterize the threat level. It simply says we are monitoring. That suggests U.S. intelligence is taking the Russian evacuation seriously and trying to determine whether there is a credible threat. At 3:47 p.m., sources within the Russian military-industrial complex began leaking information to independent Russian media outlets. According to these sources, Russian satellite reconnaissance detected unusual activity at multiple Iranian Revolutionary Guard bases in western Iran over the past 96 hours. The activity includes the movement of ballistic missile launchers, the activation of command and control facilities, and encrypted communications patterns consistent with pre-strike preparations. If accurate, this intelligence suggests Russia believes Iran is positioning for a major attack on Israel, and Putin ordered the evacuation to protect Russian nationals from Iranian retaliation scenarios. But at 4:23 p.m., a separate intelligence assessment emerged from European sources. According to officials briefed on NATO intelligence, Russia has been repositioning S-400 air defense systems in Syria over the past 2 weeks. The systems are now positioned to provide coverage over northern Israel. Additionally, Russian electronic warfare units in Syria have increased jamming operations targeting Israeli military communications. And this activity pattern suggests Russia may be preparing the battlefield for its own operations, not simply reacting to Iranian threat intelligence. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, because what I am about to show you is the intelligence assessment and the 3 possible explanations for Putin's evacuation order. Intelligence analysts are evaluating 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, Russia is preparing to strike Israeli targets. Possible targets include Israeli military positions in Syria, Israeli intelligence facilities, or Israeli assets linked to recent attacks on Russian allies like Iran or Hezbollah. If Russia plans a strike, evacuating Russian citizens prevents casualties and removes a diplomatic complication. Scenario 2, Russia has intelligence that Iran or Hezbollah is preparing a major attack on Israel. Iran has threatened retaliation for Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and IRGC commanders. Hezbollah has tens of thousands of rockets aimed at Israel. If Russia's intelligence services detected imminent large-scale attacks, Putin might evacuate Russian citizens to avoid casualties while maintaining plausible deniability about the source of the threat. Scenario 3, Russia is using the evacuation as a psychological operation. By ordering Russians out of Israel without explanation, Putin creates uncertainty, forces Israel to divert resources to threat assessment, and signals that Russia has intelligence capabilities that Israel and the West do not fully understand. This would be a demonstration of Russian intelligence superiority without actual military action. Here are the 6 indicators we are watching to determine which scenario is correct. Indicator 1, does Russia begin military repositioning in Syria? If Russian forces in Syria move closer to Israeli borders, or if Russian air defense systems activate, it signals preparation for strikes or for defending against Israeli retaliation. Indicator 2, does Iran or Hezbollah change their military posture? If Iranian forces in Syria mobilize, or if Hezbollah moves rocket launchers into firing position, it suggests scenario 2, that Russia knows an attack is coming. Indicator 3, do other countries issue similar evacuation orders? If China, India, or European nations tell their citizens to leave Israel, it means multiple intelligence services have the same threat assessment as Russia. If no other country issues warnings, it suggests Russia has unique intelligence or is bluffing. Indicator 4, does Israeli military readiness increase? If Israel activates reserve units, deploys Iron Dome batteries, or moves forces to northern borders, it means Israeli intelligence now shares Russia's threat assessment. Indicator 5, does the United States reposition military assets? If U.S. aircraft carriers move closer to the eastern Mediterranean, or if U.S. forces in the region go to higher alert status, it signals that Washington believes the threat is real. Indicator 6, does Putin make any public statements in the next 48 hours? If Putin addresses the Russian people, or if he speaks with foreign leaders and those conversations leak, we will learn whether this is about imminent action or long-term strategy. Here are the 3 long-term scenarios. Scenario 1, nothing happens. The 72-hour window passes, no strikes occur. Russian citizens return to Israel. Putin's evacuation order is revealed as either excessive caution or a successful deterrent that prevented an attack. This is the false alarm scenario. Scenario 2, someone strikes Israel within 72 hours. It could be Iran, Hezbollah, or another actor. Russian citizens are safely evacuated. Putin is credited with protecting Russian lives based on superior intelligence. Russia's regional influence increases. This is the validated warning scenario. Scenario 3, Russia strikes Israeli targets within 72 hours. The evacuation order was preparation for Russian military action. Israel retaliates. The U.S. is forced to choose whether to support Israel militarily against Russia. NATO is split on how to respond. The Middle East conflict expands into a direct Russia-Israel confrontation. This is the escalation scenario. Subscribe right now, like this video, comment with your prediction. I am tracking all 3 scenarios, and you will see the analysis here as events unfold. Let me show you why this evacuation order is unprecedented. Russia and Israel have maintained stable relations since the 1990s. Over 1 million Israelis are of Russian origin. The 2 countries have deep cultural, economic, and intelligence ties. Russia has never issued an emergency evacuation order for Israel, not during the 2006 Lebanon war, not during the 2014 Gaza conflict, not during the multiple Israeli-Syrian confrontations. This is the first time in modern Russian-Israeli relations that Moscow has told its citizens to leave Israel immediately with no clear explanation. What I know for certain right now, at 11:47 a.m. Moscow time, Russia ordered all Russian citizens to evacuate Israel within 72 hours. The Kremlin cited deteriorating security but provided no specifics. Aeroflot added emergency flights. Israel says it sees no imminent threat. The Pentagon is monitoring. And the world is trying to determine whether Putin knows something about an attack on Israel or whether Russia is preparing to attack Israel itself. The next 72 hours will answer that question. When those 72 hours expire, we will know whether Russian citizens left because of intelligence about someone else's attack, or because Russia needed them out of the way before Russian missiles launched. Stay with this channel, turn on notifications. When the 72-hour window closes, when any strikes occur, when Putin's calculation is revealed, you will see the analysis here immediately. This is not routine diplomacy. This is Russia evacuating its citizens from a stable ally with no public explanation. And that means Putin knows something that the rest of the world is about to learn.